Single-player, narrative-driven experiences are great. But how many games out there with an ending are worth playing again? Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 of the best games you can replay after finishing, with bonus. Starting off with number 10, it's God of War. Added to the base game on August 20th, 2018, the New Game Plus mode in God of War 2017 is about as good as one of these modes gets. There's expected features like being able to start the game over with your previously earned equipment and skills, but there's a boatload more. That's really what makes New Game Plus so good in this game. It just adds a ton of extra stuff. You can further upgrade your armor, way past the previous limits, using a new resource, which is of course very nice. But what's really interesting is the entirely new sets of armor that only appear when you play the game again. To really mix things up, enemies also have new attacks and behaviors. Certain bosses can potentially be a lot tougher than they already were, and even some of the standard enemies will give you some unexpected trouble. That's not the only new thing enemies do either. In combat, they now sometimes become elite, which was exclusive to the Give Me God of War difficulty, but now happens even if you're playing on normal Give Me a Challenge difficulty. At least if you're playing on easy, it still doesn't happen, so if you really want to steamroll through a New Game Plus game, you can. That option's still available. There's not any new story content or massive changes in the game, but all the additions to the game, if you choose to replay it, are really good. It gives you new armor to get, more difficult enemies to fight. It's enough that it's fun to go back without feeling like you're missing out if you don't. God of War 2017 is, of course, one of the best games on PlayStation and now on PC, and it has one of the best New Game Plus modes of its generation. At number 9 is the Final Fantasy VII Remake. One of the most surprising things about this remake was how good the combat system actually ended up being. It's very easy to use, but also very deep, and while for some it can take a while to click, it's really satisfying once you get the hang of it. On normal, the game never really forces you to get the most out of the combat system, because you can kind of always just cheese your way through any problem with brute force, but on hard mode, that is not an option. For a lot of players, the real game doesn't start until you unlock hard mode, which becomes available after you complete the game. The whole mode isn't quite the same as traditional New Game Plus, because at the same time you unlock hard mode, you also unlock chapter select, which lets you replay any chapter at whatever difficulty. So technically you could go straight to the hardest challenges in the battle arena if you wanted right from the start, but you probably won't have the experience to actually do much without going back and playing through a large chunk of the game over again. There's one big change that makes hard mode completely different from normal. You cannot use items, at all. This one thing completely changes how you have to think about battles in this game, because in battle you can only heal with magic and skills outside of battle, or rest at benches, and that's it. Like God of War, bosses now have some new tricks up their sleeves as well, and some of these are just cruel, like the Hell House, which is bad enough normally, now summons Tonberries to make everything even more ridiculous. Playing the game the first time, you might think that the game would be impossible without items, because even on normal, it's really not the easiest game out there, but the fact that the combat of the game works so well even when you remove such a seemingly vital part is just a testament to how well designed the game is. The slow parts of the game are still pretty slow, so you'll have to brace yourself for that, but hard mode is definitely worth going back and experiencing. And number 8 is Hades. This is a game all about replaying. It's a roguelike after all, so the expectation is for the player to try to beat the game, die, and then try again. But with Hades, escaping the underworld isn't the end. There's actually a ton to do after you beat the game. It's hard to even describe this as a replay because the story keeps going like normal after finishing it. But no matter what you do, the game starts you back at the bottom of Hades and forces you to work your way back up to the surface. So in that regard, I think it counts. The big addition to the game after finishing it is a thing called the Pact of Punishment, which is a set of modifiers that you can adjust to make your next run more challenging. The modifiers can affect your heat level, and if you manage to beat bosses and escape the underworld under these conditions, you can unlock special secrets. It's a kind of complicated system, but if you're enjoying Hades, it gives you a lot to think about and some interesting ways to challenge yourself. The game also doesn't really end after the first escape, as different things will happen if you manage to escape again. Like the Final Fantasy VII Remake, for a lot of players, the quote-unquote real Hades doesn't start until after you beat the game the first time, and the game does a very good job encouraging you to experiment with different weapons and upgrade combos with the whole pact of punishment system. And number 7 is Batman Arkham Knight. Now, the entire Arkham series has done a great job with New Game Plus modes, but we're just going to focus on Arkham Knight for this one because of how much they added and changed. It does all the fun stuff previous games in the series did with its replay mode, while adding a few extra surprises. The big change is that, like in Arkham City and Arkham Origins before it, on New Game Plus mode, the counter icons are gone, so it's left up to the player to time their encounters rather than just watching for icons to appear. Enemies are also all around tougher, they take more hits, do more damage, they're faster, and combined with the removed counter icon, makes combat encounters a lot tougher. That's not all either, they also mixed up enemy layouts, so tougher enemies from the end of the game start showing up at the beginning, but at least you start out with your gadgets and upgrades, so that balances things out a little. The last big change has to do with the fear takedowns. In the normal game, once you have that charged up, you're good to go, but now if you get caught by an enemy, then you lose the charge and you have to silently take down another enemy to get it back, so the game forces you to play more carefully to avoid getting spotted. All this stuff makes the New Game Plus mode a lot tougher, but it's also incredibly satisfying when you master it. Of course, we gotta mention the one last thing they added when you replay the game, that crazy Joker jump scare that happens when you start. There really isn't any new story content beyond that, but that moment is unforgettable. And number 6 is Undertale, an unusual way if you look at it, but one of Undertale's most defining features is how to replay it. Depending on your actions in the first playthrough, characters will react differently, different events will play out, and if you manage to be really nice in your first playthrough, it becomes possible to get the best ending on your second playthrough. So if you kill a character on your first round, the game remembers it. Certain characters seem more aware than others, like Sans, who doesn't just know about the reset, they seem aware of you reloading your game. Like if you fight them, they get new dialogue every time you die. The most important part of replaying your game for most players is probably unlocking the true pacifist ending, which only becomes available after you finish the game once. That's how you can see the true ending of the game, but only if you've managed to finish a playthrough of the game without killing anything. On the flip side, you can also play through the game and kill literally everything in the genocide route, and the game will remember that too. So if you wanted to see what happens and just killed everything, even if you reset and go for the good ending, the game remembers that you did the genocide route and will ruin your good ending because of it. It's kind of bizarre to describe, but that's just Undertale, I guess. It's really the story stuff that makes this game interesting to retry rather than the gameplay stuff, but there's a lot of interesting stuff that can only be seen after you beat it. And number 5 is Dark Souls 2. Like the Arkham series, the Dark Souls games all have pretty satisfying New Game Plus modes, but in this case, I think it's Dark Souls 2 which has the most interesting stuff going on. These games normally all work in the same way. You beat the last boss, you get a cutscene and credits, and then your character is sent back to the start with all the armor, weapons, and stats. Enemies are all tougher too, but usually that's only something you really notice in the boss fights, which can get pretty brutal in the New Game Plus. Dark Souls 2 does things a little bit differently. It throws a few surprises at you. For instance, enemy layouts get mixed up. There's suddenly a lot more NPC invasions that tend to pop up at the worst possible times, and certain bosses get some help to make them even more annoying. The invasions in particular really change things up. They really like to show up to harass you when you're in a dangerous spot, are vulnerable or easy distracted, etc., that type of thing. And the enemy placement is sometimes straight up cruel. At least there's some new stuff to find though. Some of the bosses drop new rings, most of which are pretty great to have. There's a few other surprises as well, like in Brightstone Cove, where the boss will usually attack you before entering the boss area in New Game Plus. That never happens normally, so unless you know about it going in, it's a pretty big shock. Dark Souls 2 tried a lot of new things, and some of them didn't work, but a lot of the changes they made for New Game Plus really did work. And number 4 is the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes. Capcom has done an amazing job recently with the Resident Evil games. While they're relatively short in length, they pack the game with so many alternate modes and unlockables that they're really fun to go back to, even if at the end of the day you're just replaying the same game again. The funny thing about Resident Evil 2 Remake is that really it asks you to play the same game twice. It's not really a New Game Plus mode, but after beating the game as either Claire or Leon, the game asks you to go back and do it again with some slight changes. Normally that'd be kind of annoying, but with this game it's so well done, it doesn't feel that repetitive, even though all you're really doing is playing the game again. All the new weapons, cutscenes, and bosses keep things interesting, enough so that it's easy to forget just how much of the game you're just simply replaying. Of course, there are full New Game Plus options as well, and there's a lot of fun stuff here just because the game itself is just satisfying to play. With the Resident Evil 3 remake, the game itself is even shorter than Resident Evil 2, but to make up for it, they expanded the New Game Plus options and almost turned it into a new mode with the simple addition of an unlockable item shop. How that works is you earn points by completing in-game achievements, and you can spend those points to buy items that make the game easier, like bolt cutters that let you bypass entire sections of the game if you start out with them. With the shop, the game encourages you to try to beat the game on harder difficulties because you can gain access to items that make them easier. It's a simple addition that gives you something to go for when you're playing the game again, and it seems basic at first, but some of these items can drastically alter how you play the game. And number 3 is Blasphemous. The thing most people remember about this game are the weird visuals, but there's a surprisingly solid game behind all that flash, and with the recent Stir of Dawn update, they got a lot of interesting content to explore. Good luck seeing it though, because if you want to take on the new bosses and complete some of the new side quests, you have to beat it and play it on New Game Plus. Yeah, this is a game that hides a ton of content in its New Game Plus mode called True Torment. You get the usual benefits, all your health, abilities, and equipment carry over, but certain upgrades, like the game's version of the Estus Flask, don't. That's all good. Yeah, they're not going to make things any easier for you because all enemies now do way more damage. The biggest addition is there's 5 new bosses you can take on. They're no joke, and they can be found hidden all around the world. They all share a similar appearance, but each one uses a unique weapon, and they will all mess you up. A lot of games like to hide some bonus lore and secret ending in New Game Plus modes, but few games go so far as to add 5 secret bosses you can only fight when replaying the game. And number 2 is Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. Compared to many of the other New Game Plus modes on this list, there's no little secrets or bonuses for playing Sekiro again. It works a lot like many of the other games in the Souls series where you kill the last boss, restart with most of your items and skills carrying over. The difference is, with this game, starting a New Game Plus doesn't make the game a lot more challenging than it was before. Sure, it makes it so posture doesn't regenerate as quickly, so you can't rely on blocking as much and enemies do get harder, but the challenge is a lot more incremental compared to a lot of From Software games. What this boils down to is that New Game Plus, the game stops being one of the most difficult games of its generation, and one you can actually breeze through. Your knowledge of enemy patterns, combined with all the skills you already have, can turn bosses that were incredibly difficult into total chumps. That's what makes the replay of this game so good. Not that it's a challenge, but that it's actually a lot easier. The first go-around was tough enough, so getting a break and being able to just cut loose for New Game Plus is probably one of the most satisfying things ever, especially because a big part is how much you have improved, like as a player. The New Game Plus mode in Sakura is kind of a victory lap more than anything else, but considering how painful it is to beat the game the first time, I think it's a well-deserved reward. And number 1 is Nier and Nier Automata. When it comes to games you replay, few offer as much content as the Nier games. It's not exactly New Game Plus because in many ways these games change significantly every time you play them, but at the core, you're basically doing the same thing again with some additional context. That's definitely the case for the original Nier, which asks you to play through the game multiple times if you actually want the full story. At least after the first playthrough, the game starts off in the second half, so each additional playthrough is shorter, but still. With Nier Automata, they mix up the playthrough a lot more. The first time you start a new game, you play as an entirely new character, and a lot of the boss fights play out completely differently. In the third playthrough, the game changes dramatically and asks you to play as a third character. Technically, so much changes that it's basically just the rest of the game, but you still have to actually select to start a game again from the menu to continue. Few games add as much as the Nier series in terms of replaying them, and it's a pretty big commitment considering that you have to replay large chunks of the games unchanged to see some of the new stuff, but it's also one of the most interesting uses of the New Game Plus concept out there, and really only something that can be done in the realm of video games. It's actually fascinating, but if I never have to see the Lost Shrine again, it'll be fine. If you want to see every ending in the Nier remake, you have to go through this place at least 6 times. Like I said, multiple playthroughs is a cool idea, but it can get a little tedious. A bonus game for for you is Neo 1 and 2. I just want to throw this one at the end because these games are absolutely nuts with New Game Plus. This is another series where hardcore fans will tell you that the game only really starts after you beat the story, because for most players on their first playthrough, your equipment doesn't really matter that much. With Dreams of the Strong, the first post-game difficulty level, you really need to start thinking about your gear because pretty much everything gets a lot tougher from here on. On harder levels like Dream of the Demon, bosses get new attacks, enemy placements start getting mixed up, enemies shoot projectiles a lot faster, and there's just a ton of changes that we could sit here probably forever listing. But let's just stop now and say that if you want a series with a lot to do even after you beat it, you can't go wrong with both of the Neo games. And that's all for today. Leave us a comment, let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable all notifications, and as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.